Now, statement 12 of chapter 2. Except for being a principle or merely a secondary feature, the attainment of fruition is not disrupted. So this Vajra statement, if you just read that, it's pretty kind of like incomprehensible. So context is really important. Except for being a principle or merely a secondary feature, the attainment of fruition is not disrupted. So again, what we're talking about here, as I said when we ended yesterday, is that this statement still has to do with this notion of how over time the universe, the cosmos, will decline. And that decline is related to the, you could say, the collective virtue and non-virtue of the beings who inhabit that particular world, that particular universe. So that's a basic Buddhist teaching, that this physical universe that we sentient beings inhabit, it is the way that it is because of the karma of the sentient beings that live in this universe. So if collectively the sentient beings are accumulating more negative karma, and more negative karma is ripening, then the conditions of this world will be more negative. And collectively, if it is more virtue, then it will be more positive, and so on and so forth. Then alongside this notion of the increase or decrease of virtue and non-virtue and happiness and suffering in this world, there's also the notion that the Buddha's teachings themselves will also go through periods of increase and decline. So of course, immediately during time of Buddha, that is the time of increase of the Buddha Dharma. Then over time, that decreases and that decreases and that decreases. So the longer and the further we are away from the time of Buddha Shakyamuni, then it is generally considered to be the Dharma has declined even more. So in terms of the Dharma declining, they will say, they often divide it further into how in the time that is closest to the Buddha, there is there are the teachings, then there are the successful practice of the teachings, and then there is the actual success of receiving, of achieving the results of the practice. So there are the teachings are being practiced, the practice is bearing fruit. So it's said that the closer we are to the time of the Buddha, the more all three of these are actually happening. Then the further we go away from the Buddha, so in the next period, like the Dharma semblance age, the teachings exist, practice exists, but getting results harder and harder. Then in the third period, the teachings exist, practice is harder and harder, results is even harder. At the beginning of the third period. Then as the third period further devolves, then teachings are barely present. Forget about practice. Nobody is really doing the practice, and for sure no results are happening. So that is the meaning here when it says in the Vajra statement, it's saying, except for being a principle or merely a secondary feature, meaning talking about the decline, and how it declines. Oh, in the first period, there's practice. I mean, there are the teachings, there's the practice of the teachings, and there's the result. Oh, in the second period, there's only the teachings and some practice, and then no more results. Oh, the third period, barely any teachings, barely any practice, barely any results. So here, except for being a principle or merely a secondary feature, saying, yes, this can be the general pattern, but the attainment of fruition is in no way, like in a fixed way, disrupted. Meaning, Kyopa is saying, don't have this idea that, because we live in this corrupt times, in these end times, you might even call it that, right? The results will not come anymore. Right? There's no fruition anymore. Often we say, like, look around, where do we see, great masters, great accomplished practitioners? So yes, sometimes we say that in order to encourage, right, us to practice more seriously. But sometimes we say that as if, we say that in a way that we are blind to seeing how the results, the fruits can come. Even now in this degenerate age, sometimes that expression is used. Degenerate means the lifespan is degenerating, merit is degenerating, environment is degenerating, people's attitudes are degenerating. It's not saying that you are degenerate, that somehow you are rotten inside. It's talking about all these conditions that are conducive and positive. They are going down, down, down. So the degenerate age. But here Kyopa is saying, even in this so-called degenerate age, don't ever think, that the fruit, cannot come anymore for sure. For sure or not for sure, up to you, he says. Not up to some kind of like, Buddha has already said, not possible now to get results, therefore not possible. Buddha says, the Buddha actually says, no, it's not like that. So Kyopa Rinpoche definitely says, no, it's not like that. Except for the fact that, yes, things are kind of, looking that way, but in the end, it's still up to you. Of the teachings that exist, are you going to go learn them? Are you going to go acquire them? And in acquiring these teachings, in making effort to learn these teachings, are you going to practice them? And if you practice them with the right motivation, with the right understanding, of course, the results will come. Nothing can block the results from coming if we are doing the learning of the teachings, the putting into practice in the right way. Of course, the results will come. So let's look at Khenpo Kunpal's commentary. The time frame for how long the precious teachings of the exalted Buddha will remain is taught variously in many sutras and tantras. But prominent are the teachings in the commentary to the Transcendent Wisdom in 100,000 verses, and so forth. According to this, there are 10 sets of 500 years. That is, in total, 5,000 years. So according to this system. As Khenpo Kunpal says, there are different kind of time frames given. But he says, if you look at this particular source, it says there are 10 sets of 500 years, among which the first 3 sets are the period of fruition. So the first 3 sets, so in this system, it means the first 1,500 years, from the time the Buddha appeared and taught the world, and for the next 1,500 years, the results exist. So of course, if the results are happening, that means the practice is happening, and that means the teachings are present. Then the second three sets are the period of practice, meaning results are no longer happening, but people are still practicing, and the teachings exist. And the third three sets are the period of authoritative scriptures, meaning the actual teachings are still there. The authoritative scriptures. And the last set is the period of merely holding onto the signs of the Dharma. According to this system, then the last set, the final, you would say 4 parts, because there's 10 altogether. So first three, and then the last 4. Just a semblance of the teachings exists in the world, at best. Since there are many who attain fruition in the first period, this is the principal feature here. Then, since the attainments of fruition gradually decrease, Ashwagosha considers it as just a secondary feature, but not that the attainment of fruition later becomes completely disrupted. On the other hand, even now, if one practices diligently, it is possible to attain fruition. And this will also clearly be the case at the time when the lifespan becomes even just 10 years. Even when, if we decline to the point that human life is only 10 years long, even that time, for it is said in the coming of the time of Takinis that during the reign of King Dotachen, when the lifespan will be just 10 years, our hearts will still exist. There will be people, even when people only live to 10 years, even that short of a time, there will still be our hearts in the world. There will still be attainment of fruit in the world. So this is really to shake us up from this kind of complacent, or maybe even pessimistic view that, oh no, and because of that, we don't see qualities that do arise in genuine practitioners. Right now, I think one of the big problems we have now is, with social media and everything, I would say, like we get distracted by all the noise of social media. Meaning we have superstars, Buddhist superstars. And not to be, disrespectful, but a lot of Buddhist superstars, let me rephrase, not the superstars themselves. Who knows? I don't know, about the superstars themselves. But what we tend to latch onto is for sure the image, right, that social media has invented. What social media has invented, the image, might actually match the quality of these beings, for sure. But know that often what we are inspired by is the illusory, you could say, display created by social media. So there's a particular karma there too. Yes. And as long as you understand that, actually it's okay, that it's an image, right? An illusory image that you are inspired by. If you understand that piece, it doesn't really matter, whether the person behind that image is or isn't so wonderful, so perfect, so great, that the image is showing. Do you understand this point? Because the image is the illusory manifestation that is related to your good karma that you are able to see, the good qualities. As for the actual person behind this, so to say, it's not your business really. So even later on, maybe, oh, big scandal now. Actually, this person is not as great, la 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 la. If you really know how to relate to this, you say, well, that's their karma, Jigdan Sumgan is very clear in one of the statements. It says, even bodhisattvas from 8 bhumis and up, if the causes of suffering ripens for them, they will suffer too. Even 8 bhumis and up, they will suffer too. And this is a very unique Jigdan Sumgun emphasis. Other lineages, when they hear this, they say, wait a minute, how is that possible? Not possible. And truthfully, you and me, we don't know whether possible or not. 8th bhumi, I have not met anyone that has a certificate saying that they're on the 8th bhumi, and I have not poked them with a needle to see if they go ouch or not, So I don't know suffering or not, right? But if we take to heart what Kyoba says, even 8th bhumi and above, if the conditions and the causes of suffering comes together for them, they too will fall into realms of suffering. In the commentary for that statement, it says, sometimes they fall into the realm of suffering because of some bodhisattva activities that they due to some of their bodhisattva practices earlier. So that fall is not necessarily like a bad fall. But nonetheless, there will be temporary experience of suffering. So in this sense, we have to say, to me again, what I take home, my take-home lesson from this point is that even when we are doing the right thing, sometimes temporarily we have to experience suffering. Sometimes temporarily we might have to experience suffering. Because until we are Buddhas, our actions are not completely skillful. Yeah. Even if our motivation might be very pure, sometimes our actions cannot be perfect, cannot be completely skillful. So certain mixed karma is going on there. Mixed karma as in, very closely, virtue, non-virtue, not mix in literally the sense mix, right? In Kyopa said, they don't get literally mix. Mix in the sense that they're closely occurring next to each other. But anyway, back to that. One mistake, one problem with thinking that, the fruits of practice no longer arise is, as I was saying, we get distracted by all these kind of loud superstar representations. Then the real effect of practice that is occurring in people that are not hyped up by media, we fail to recognize. We fail to recognize, then we are not inspired by, we fail to be inspired by the actual fruits of practice. Instead, we might be inspired in an unrealistic way about the results of practice. Then that becomes an obstacle. Then that becomes an obstacle. So we want to guard against that. And this statement is telling us that the results, the fruition, exist still. So we should pay attention to how the results are arising. Not just other people, like we're not, again, not this is not just talking about other people. See the results, the fruits that are arising in your own practice. Pay attention to those results, pay attention to those fruits. In terms of that, again, it's very easy to get distracted. I was just talking to someone or communicating with someone recently, and they were saying to me, oh, met a friend, and seems like they are now practicing very seriously, very intensely. Then I asked, I said, "Hmm, what does that mean? Then they say, oh, looks because they're talking about, they're doing how many hours of practice a day. They are accumulating how many mantras. I say, yeah. I say that's the spiritual materialism, especially among people who practice Vajrayana, Tibetan Buddhism. I said, often it just means they're doing a lot of things. They're being very busy. May or may not, may or may not be actually good. It is good if they're very busy practicing Dharma, they're doing a lot of things, and they are doing it with the clear goal of why am I doing all these things, doing all these hours of mantra accumulation, prostration, and how many sadhanas a day and all of that. Oh, it is to destroy the mental defilements. It's for that purpose. And moreover, to destroy the mental defilements of both myself and those of others. Bodhicitta. If you're not doing it for that reason, and like sort of you could say, all the mantra recitation, all the prostrations, all the various sadhanas that you're doing, if you're not sharpening that knife, to kill mental defilements, you could be sharpening that knife and killing innocence, to put it in very blunt terms. And often people mistake the sharpening of the knives to be, progress. Oh, they are practicing very seriously now. Well, what does that mean, Until we are working on really destroying the mental defilements, disengaging from the 10 non-virtues, engaging in the 10 virtues, engaging in the 6 perfections, the 6 paramitas of bodhisattvas. That is, what practice is. Otherwise, there's only a semblance of practice. And if there's only a semblance of practice, because the Dharma that you're learning is only a semblance of the actual Dharma, then there's no fruition. At best, maybe a semblance of fruition. And when you further get distracted by representations of semblances of fruition, and not understand that that's just a semblance of fruition, then become unrealistic as to what the fruit is, what the result is, then even when the results are arising for us, we fail to appreciate. We still say, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm such a sorry person, things are not going well for me, and it's just not very satisfying. And it's like, wait, can you see the improvements that you have made? Recognize those as When they are fruits, when they are results, recognize them as results. Of course, be careful not to imagine the results when you don't have any of the results. That's also very possible. So that's statement 12. I want to go back a little and say about how, right, that statement that says 10, statement 10, that in this life, and mainly occur for oneself as phenomenal experience in this life, So one example, I just remembered this 2:10. In this very life, mainly the karmic results that are phenomena experienced in this life occurs. So mainly, the results of our actions manifest in this life. Let me give you a slightly different translation, maybe less literal. Results mainly arise as the phenomena experienced in this very life. And this is said in response to people claim that except for what is experienced during the present life, as the result of acts in previous lives, and what is experienced many lifetimes from now, as the result of previous and present acts, results of present acts do not arise as phenomena experienced in this present life. There were some who literally kind of have this belief that, like some of the Kyopa's students, they think that everything you experience now is the ripening of things done in previous lifetimes. And whatever you do in this lifetime, the results won't come until later lifetimes. So Kyopa says, no. Results mainly arise as the phenomena experienced in this very life. So His Holiness Drigong Kyabgun, in one of his messages that he shared during the pandemic, I remember, he talked about how the pandemic is one very powerful example and reminder to all of us that, especially this Vajra statement, he says that now that human beings have developed such powerful tools, such powerful gadgets, weapons, now that human beings, have become so smart. So we have created things, that can so quickly do good and do harm so quickly. So then his owners gave the example. He says, like in the past, to cut down a mountain might take one lifetime for a group of people. Now, within a few weeks, you can destroy the mountain. And so then he says the karmic results also very fast. Such pandemics will become more and more. Not to like spread like this doomsday view, but it's just literally that's one side of it. Why? Because in the past it didn't spread that fast because people were not flying back and forth here and there, up and down, right? In a way, it's neutral, like these ability to fly here, fly there, and diseases spreading and mutating even slower back then. But right now, right, Now, likewise, we can also distribute cures and vaccines also very fast. Everything can also be very fast. But then all this speed, is quite dangerous if we're not careful. So especially now in this, again, quote unquote, degenerate age, both good and bad, the happiness and suffering that arises from our actions can be experienced very quickly, very immediately. Particularly true, His Honor said, in our own time. And can you see this, he says. So specifically, he quoted Gilbert Rinpoche's Vajra Statement. And he says, this statement has become even more true for us living in the times that we live in. You can destroy, some things so quickly. But you can also build something so quickly. So in the context of like Dharma practicing, it says that secret mantra practices can also act very fast, especially in the degenerate age. There are statements like that that says that when we practice secret mantra, meaning the Vajrayana aspects of the Buddha's teachings, they become more effective. They are more effective during the degenerate age. But of course, those of you who understand Kyopa's teachings, all these three, they are not referring to three different denominations of Buddhism. Yeah, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. Yeah? Individual liberation, Bodhisattva, and secret mantra. They're not referring to three alternatives. And they're not referring to three, much less, three types of Buddhism. Oh, Buddhism in this area is this. Oh, Buddhism in that area is that. Buddhism in that area is that. Yes, we do use that, in more commonly. But please understand, whenever, especially in Kyopa's material, whenever we talk about, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, or individual liberation, Bodhisattva, and secret mantra, we're not talking about other types of Buddhism that exist in the world. We're talking about aspects of our own practice, always having these three parts. Individual liberation, where we are rooted in. Bodhisattva, in terms of motivation and scope of our practice. Vajrayana, or secret mantra, in terms of our understanding of what is going on and how to deal with the mental defilements. Mahamudra or Dzogchen is included in this third group. So particularly in Kyopa's tradition, then you can say it's the practice of Mahamudra, therefore secret mantra, informing all the other aspects, so that even individual liberation level of training is understood and observed through the Mahamudra understanding. But not in a way that downplays the individual liberation, but actually shows so clearly, oh wow, the individual liberation vows are so profound. Once you have the Mahamudra understanding and perspective, when you look at the individual liberation vows, the so-called Buddhism for dummies, you begin to see more and more the profundity of that set of training. So your understanding of the Four Noble Truths becomes more profound. Your understanding of renunciation becomes more profound. Your understanding of, what are the causes of happiness and what are the causes of suffering, you become more and more kind of impressed, appreciative, and convinced by the seemingly simple teachings, the seemingly beginners, preliminary teachings. That's why Kyopa famously has a statement, one of the Vajra statements. He says, what is considered preliminary and basic in other traditions, we here take to be the most profound. That statement is found in the next chapter. We're almost at the end of chapter 2 now. Chapter 2 has 15 statements, so we have now finished 12 of those statements. So that's it for today.